Hi there, Thomasina Williams of Sankofa Legacy Advisors, back for day 7 of my 10-part video series, inviting you to reimagine what might be possible if you choose to engage differently with your family. Day 1 was December 27th, my birthday. The invitation on day 1 was simply to do that, to reimagine what might be possible if you choose to engage differently. Day 2, the invitation, was to reflect on who you might need to become in order to engage differently. What qualities or characteristics might you want to bring forward? Day three's invitation was to reflect on where you feel discomfort in your body as it relates to engaging with your family. Oftentimes, our body is sending us signals that we tend to ignore. Day four's invitation was to reflect on the different situations in which you feel discomfort and figure out what's the factual context for what was happening in those situations. And then when you look at the factual context, what are the patterns that you can discern? Then on day 5, we moved into talking about the 4 patterns that families tend to default to ease discomfort of underlying tension within the family system. Day 5, the first pattern that we looked at was triangles. And the invitation was to reflect on where are you engaged in an anxious triangle? Where have you perhaps inserted yourself between two people or been asked to carry messages between two people? Or is there a relationship where there's some tension between you and the other person? And rather than address that tension, you're focusing on a third party. Those are all examples of circumstances where triangles. Day 6, yesterday, we looked at the second pattern that families tend to default to. That is the pattern of over and under functioning. The invitation was to reflect on where are you over functioning? Where have you taken on responsibility that really isn't yours to assume? The other side of that coin is under functioning. Where are you not taking responsibility and allowing others to do for you what you could do for yourself? Today, we're focused on the third of the 4 patterns, and that is conflict. We tend to think of conflict as being personal, but like triangles, like over and under functioning, and the 4th pattern that we're going to talk about tomorrow, conflict actually is not personal. Though it may appear to be personal, it may feel personal, it's actually an indication of upset or tension within the family system. And the system is people are simply reacting within the system to ease that discomfort. Consider this. It is within an hour before opening for a fine dining restaurant. The kitchen is quite busy. There are 2 chefs in the corner arguing over an orange. The head chef hears all the commotion, comes over to understand what is the problem. The 2 chefs, one is a pastry chef, one is a sous chef, explain that there's only 1 orange left in the entire kitchen, and both chefs need that orange for their dish. The head chef, wanting everyone to get to work, takes the orange, puts it on a counter, whips out a big knife, and cuts the orange in half. He then gives each of the other chefs half of the orange and says, "Get back to work." Now, what's interesting about this story is that no one bothered to take the time to figure out, well, why does the pastry chef need the orange? Why does the sous chef need the orange? What is the underlying interest or need here? Had anyone bothered to ask those very basic questions, they would have realized that the pastry chef only needed the rind from the orange for a zest for a dessert that he was making. And the sous chef only needed the juice from the orange for a sauce that she was making. They actually both could have gotten the entirety of the orange rather than only half if they had simply stopped to ask these questions. This kind of misunderstanding happens in families all the time. I have a client who is a matriarch in a multi generational family. She has gotten into the habit of making promises to two of her sons that are oftentimes at odds with each other. She will say something to one son, agree to a request when she knows it's not something, frankly, that she either wants to do or can do, and that she knows it's going to cause a problem with the other son. Why does she do that? Because she's anxious about upsetting either son. And again, this type of behavior, when there is tension, we react automatically, instinctively, without thinking about it. So she ends up getting herself into predicaments, or I should say, she used to. She doesn't do that quite as much anymore because we've been working on it. And while it might look like there's sibling rivalry between the two sons, that they are arguing all the time and that there's some personal animus between them, the challenge has been that the mom has made promises to each of them that were at odds with each other, not the brothers themselves. So when she learned to pause to make sure that she understood what was being asked of her, so that was another challenge, because she was acting so quickly, automatically, there was oftentimes misunderstanding just around what the request was. She now has learned to pause, to ask clarifying questions, and then to simply say, I need some time to think about that. I'll get back to you. I need some time to think about that. I'll get back to you. What this has done is to give her space to literally think and make sure she is not agreeing to something that's going to have unintended consequences. When she has been able to do that, it has eliminated the conflict between the two brothers. What appeared to be personal animus based conflict between the two brothers was actually a lack of clarity around who had responsibility for what, which of them had the authority to do what. Once that was clarified, the conflicts went away. So, the invitation for you today is to reflect on, where are you involved in a conflict that appears personal? But if you think about it, if you reflect on it, it's really based on a lack of clarity around roles, responsibilities, boundaries, perhaps, expectations. There's some lack of clarity that is the underlying challenge. It's not based on personal animus, despite the appearances. So that's our invitation for day 7. Where are you involved in a conflict that appears personal? But when you think about it, it's based upon an underlying lack of clarity that is causing what appears to be a rivalry or some kind of a personal struggle. I'll leave you with that for today and be back tomorrow for day 8 and the last of the 4 patterns that we tend to fall into automatically as humans to ease discomfort when there's underlying tension in our relationships. Thanks for listening.